Hi everyone, Elliot here. In this video, I'm going to explain to you how the heck this transformer or GPT works under the hood. We're not going to go all the way down to the technical nitty gritty, but we're going to give a high level overview of how these things work. All right. So the whole idea here is next word prediction. Uh, the idea with that is um, you take you take a sequence of tokens or words, for example. You have the sequence. Um, the fox jumped over the, and then you have to predict the next one after that, right? And so the idea there is you have a bunch of different words in your vocabulary that you sample from. You have a distribution of which ones are most likely to be predicted, and then you sample from the highest one, right? So say it was the fox jumped over the bridge. Maybe that was like a 0.78, meaning 78% likelihood, and maybe jumped over the log was like 21%, and then everything else was like way lower, like less than 1%. It's going to say, okay, well, we have two that are pretty high, but jumped over the bridge was the highest one. So we're going to sample that, right? And the idea is you want to get that as close to the actual data prediction, not the actual training data, and you try to optimize for that, right? So if bridge was correct, that means the model did good, and the loss or the prediction the prediction loss is bad. High loss is bad. Low loss is good. The loss is going to be lower if you predict that correctly. But if you pick one of those, if you sample one from like the less than 1% probabilities, then that's going to be really bad, right? And so the whole idea there is you want to optimize for picking the most likely or the most correct answer. Each token, you want to make sure you're predicting each one correctly. Now, this paper, Attention is All You Need, proposed a novel solution to solve this and really scale it up. So essentially what this is it's initially designed for machine translation, so English to German translation tasks. And they simply were just playing around with stuff, and then they figured out, oh, this performs really well. And then a bunch of other people did some cool stuff with it and figure out that you can talk to them and have conversations. So it started with machine translation. Now, if we go down to the actual architecture itself, let me break this down for you. So just forget this block. This is the encoder, where we don't worry about the encoder. This is the decoder, and we do worry about this, but only certain parts, okay? So what I want you to keep in mind is this little like this output embedding here. Remember this little embedding term, the positional encoding, masked multi-head attention, add a norm, feed forward, add a norm, linear softmax output. That's all we care about. So we're taking out this part, and we're taking out this part here. Yeah. Now how this goes is you have, say, in this embedding, right? You say you have a token here, and let's break down what a token is. So say the word dog is a token. This is going to map to an embedding. An embedding is literally just like a list of numbers that represents the features about that word or that token, right? So say we want to think about, oh, does it like dog food? Maybe that's like a 10. And then you have can it fly? Maybe that's like a -6. I mean, you can make a dog fly, but it needs a jetpack or something to do that. So most likely not, but I guess you could. And then like, does it have the same experience as a human? We could say like 0. We don't know actually, right? And then you have like all of your other ones, and these are the features that describe this token, right? These are the features that are mapped to it, and these this is incredibly long. So there's like a ton of features that this actually represents. And so we don't have to really think about what those features are. The model will learn those over time to favor predicting the next word or predicting the next token. So don't actually worry about like this. You don't have to write this part manually in a transformer. That is actually a learned parameter. So it's going to learn that through the training process, and it's going to optimize these values for predicting the next token. Now in a sequence, you might have I love dogs, right? And literally all this is going to be is just, you're going to have in the sequence, you're going to have a bunch of these column vectors that represents an embedding each for them, right? So for example, dogs is like the third one here. This term, you could think of it as like dog or dogs is going to just plug into there. So it's going to, you know how this one goes from like left to right? This is going to just go from top to bottom. So it's going to start with 10, -6, 0, right? Which kind of flows downwards. And those are going to be lined up. Now what you do from here is you apply a little something called positional encoding. And the positional encoding is going to help the model be aware of where tokens are relative to each other. So it might boost these values and then, you know, shrink these ones, and then boost these ones and then shrink these ones, and then like an alternating fashion, right? If I go into this paper and go like sine, for example, or cos, where did it go? Positional encoding, yes. So this is essentially what the positional encoding is. Don't worry about these functions. It's literally just saying that these alternate. That's what the sine and cos are for. Just to say that it alternates inside of here, like I was saying before. And it just makes sure that the model understands that there's a lot of descriptive elements about these, but there's also a spatial aspect to it as well. If you have all these tokens like dogs love I, it's like, that doesn't make sense. We want it to be I love dogs, and it has to be in that order. The positional encoding makes sure it's in that order. And this is either something you can induce that is like a learnable thing similar to the embeddings, or you can, you know, hand write this as seen in the paper. So after we have that, after we have this, you know, very high dimensional input with all this positional encoding going on, now we can actually do stuff with that. So if we pop down here, we have this masked multi-head attention and feed forward and then add a norm, right? So if I scroll down and write this out, we'll just say X as like an input. And then for this section here, it's going to be the mask multi-head attention, add a norm here, and then a feed forward, and then an add a norm, right? So if I write this down, feed forward, and then MHA for multi-head attention. Now let's actually explain like what the heck these are doing, right? This is the most critical part of the entire architecture, so I want to make sure this is explained properly. Now, multi-head attention, literally what this does is it takes, you have this like this grid layout, and what this does is it takes the sequence that you have, it converts it does like an operation on the input to this, and it converts that to well, a set of queries, a set of keys, and a set of values. I'm going to simplify this so we're not like going to consider the values too much here, because there's a bunch of other math and like scaling involved you have to do. I'm not going to worry about that. You convert the inputs to these queries and keys. When you do a query, you're like looking up something, right? You're trying to look up something relative to like what else exists out there. And a key you can think of as relative to yourself. This is me. So what you do is you have all these queries everywhere that you're trying to compare the key to. And so you can think of this as doing a like a dot product matrix multiply with the queries and the key values for that input sequence. Now, that is going to actually give you, what it's going to do is it's going to look at, okay, well, what's important about me and what's important about everything else. And it's going to sort of compare. It's going to compare, you know, this to this and this to this, and it's going to just go one by one through each element. It's going to take a while to do that, but this is where a lot of the transformation happens. And literally what it's going to do is find out these things called attention scores, which are going to be in a massive grid like this. And right, I drew up, I think it was a really bad grid, but you're going to get these attention scores saying how much did certain things interact. So how much did this one interact with that one, right? And it's going to go through this, and you're going to end up with a bunch of unique information about the interactions of all of these things about what is important about me and what is important about every other token in the sequence, right? And so once it does that, you can feed this into add a norm. Add a norm is literally just going to take this, it's going to take this previous, and it's going to plug that into the output. So we did an operation here where we sort of associated all of these terms in the form of an attention mechanism. That's what it's called. And it's multi-head because there's multiple heads that are doing this in parallel. So it's like you have 6 different people doing different, similar but different things. So you can sort of capture more about it, right? But anyways, this add, there's a technical term for this called the residual stream. And all this does is it just keeps information flowing through all the layers. So you start off with this input, and it's going to add that, and it's going to add that to the output of the operation in here. So it's going to go around, and it's going to add to the output. It's going to say, we're going to maintain this information, and we're going to add that here. And then what you have to do after this is to prevent things from sort of exploding and going, chaotic, and make sure everything is stabilized. You're going to normalize it. So you're going to say if everything is normally like, 10 to -10, you're going to squash this so that it's like 1 to -1. You're going to normalize it in some center point so that everything is more close together and easier to represent and carry through more layers. And then the feed forward, you can literally just think of this as a filter. So the feed forward, like what it actually is a multi-layer perceptron. And you've probably seen this before, but it's like, it has like nodes. Where it goes like this. And then like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, and they kind of like, it's all interconnected and it flows forward, right? That's what an MLP is. And you can literally just think of this as a filter. So it's going to filter whatever we got from this, and then it's going to continue to add as a part of that residual stream. It's going to keep that information flowing, and it's going to add element wise to the feed forward output, and then it's going to normalize those, squash them a little bit, and from there you literally just go to the next block. So you have an n number of these stacked on top of each other. So it goes attention, add a norm, feed forward, add a norm, multi-head attention. it just keeps going however many layers you want. So it's just, this block is like stacked on top of itself n number of times. And then in the end, you end up with a linear projection. So it's going to take whatever this information was here, and it's going to project this into a final space where it's not like trying to do the whole, where it's not trying to worry about attention anymore. It's now saying, okay, we want to put this in a space where it's actual probabilities. So it's going to project that into essentially like the length of the whole vocabulary. So if that's like 50,000 words, then it's going to project that into like 50,000. It's going to there's going to be a little learnable thing there that converts this, this feature, this cluster of features into a direct output. And then it's going to exponentiate that and normalize it into a bunch of probabilities that you can then sample words with. And then you just simply, pick the highest probability and then you sample that and that's your next word. So hopefully that made sense. I tried to not go too much off the rails there, but that's the transformer architecture. So you can look at this paper on arXiv, so arxiv.org, and then you can just search up attention is all you need, and you'll find it here. But yeah, this is the transformer paper. It's pretty awesome. Hope you enjoyed.